Hello, English 1101. I will be reviewing the foundation for building your personal narrative today. Basically, this slide, these slides are an overview of what the components are of a personal narrative. What are the building blocks? What are the essentials of writing a personal narrative? This should help you as you create your personal narratives, your two personal narratives for the assignment. And I will start now. First of all, I hope everyone is enjoying their snow day. Okay, a personal narrative is essentially a creative nonfiction writing form where the writer explores events of their life and you make some meaning, you describe the impact of that to your life then and now. So it's the key part of this definition, this is my personal definition I wrote, is making meaning out of it. It's not just telling the events, the facts of something that happened. It's actually interpreting those and making meaning out of it in your life. So that's key. Do not write a narrative that is essentially not a narrative and just an account of something that happened. A list of this happened when, and this happened with these people, and that's what happened. That is not a narrative. You need the facts, so you need the situational facts, but you need to make meaning out of it. You need to describe that impact to your life. Okay, what are the learning objectives of this lesson? Number one, identify and define the components of a narrative. Two, understand the relationship between the situation and the story. It's really key that you understand that, and we'll get into that in a minute. And then lastly, understand the relationship between particularity and universality. Key words there, particular and universal, root words of that, and we will get into that later. This is just an infographic. I will not spend much time on this, but I will review all of these elements of a personal narrative. The inside there, those are the key components of the objectives of a personal narrative. So you need to make meaning, you need to have a situation and a story. And you also need to look at particular to your story, particularity and universality. Universal truths, universal themes, universal struggles of life, and we'll talk about that later. And then around that are the slides I will go into. So each of these represents a component of what we will discuss today. Okay, opening scene, introduction. You have a choice. You can write an introduction that's traditional, just basically a preview of what's to come, but don't give it away. Don't tell too much, but it should be brief. Or you can write an opening scene, or you can do just a dialogue. So you have a choice there. Three choices, really. You can write a traditional intro, write an opening scene that may or may not have dialogue, and then you can write just a line-by-line dialogue passage that is okay too. So three choices there. This is not a traditional paper where it's very structured. You do have a lot of choices. If you write a scene, the remainder of your narrative does not have to be in chronological order. You can revisit that scene later, and so you can start like in the future sort of with the scene, and then go back in time and begin your second passage of your narrative then, and then lead back up to that scene. That's up to you, but we'll talk about that in a minute. You don't want to make your intro or your dialogue or your scene, your first passage, too long. You just want to capture the reader's attention and then move on, but don't tell them everything. The key part of a narrative is to show, not tell. You may have heard that, those of you that like to write or maybe read. A good author of creative work, nonfiction or fiction, you want to show, not tell. So you don't want to give them everything. Think of this as a preview of what's to come. Characters. So, this can't be just about you. This is not a diary project, so it needs to be, you need to have characters, people in your life. You need to go beyond just naming the characters, just define a relationship a little bit and give them some description. You don't need to name everyone, though. So it's important that you just have a couple of characters. We're only writing two very short narratives here, so like in each narrative, you're not going to go into major depths about each character, but you do need to describe who they are. Are they a sibling? Are they a teacher? Are they a friend? Are they a teammate on a sports team? So forth. Coach, whatever. You can change the names of the characters. That's called writer's choice, artistic choice. You can do that to protect them. I'm not sharing this with anybody, but you do have the choice. If you're not comfortable, just change the names of the characters. But again, it cannot be just about you and your reactions. It must have people in the story. Otherwise, it's just a diary entry. Dialogue. A little can go a long way. You can do some or a lot, but you need some in each narrative. That is required. That is in the rubric. So everyone must put a little dialogue in each narrative. You can have it stand on its own, meaning it's not part of a larger paragraph. I call that line by line, meaning you've seen that in books where it's just line by line dialogue that's not mixed into a paragraph. Or you can mix it into a paragraph, more of a traditional paragraph, and just mix in some dialogue in that. You do not need the exact words. Don't worry about that. Just try to capture the essence of it. Have fun. You can be very creative with dialogue. You can have cuss words if that's actually what was said. Don't make that up. You can use jargon, slang, anything that will make your narrative lively, but have fun with it. You also can use your native language. So if you are speaking in another language other than English, put that in there. However, I caution you, I only know a little bit of Spanish and I don't know other languages, so you can only do that a little bit, otherwise I can't read your narrative. So if you have a short dialogue passage that's in Spanish or French or whatever language, you can do that, okay? And I encourage that, but it needs to be in small little snippets, not a lot, because otherwise I will not be able to understand your narrative. Imagery and landscape. You need to paint a vivid picture for all your scenes. If you look at what I posted today, the Son of a Gun narrative excerpt that has great vivid imagery, use that as a model for how to write a narrative because I think it's great. A great example, of great model of how to write with description. So description sells your story. If you don't have description, that's your evidence of your story. Your audience will not believe you and your audience will not be engaged. Consider all of the elements, the weather, crowds, so forth, noise, what it smelled like. Think about your senses. What did it feel like? What did it smell like? What did it taste like if you're eating food or something? Imagine yourself back in those moments and ask these questions. If the scene is outside, describe the weather. Landscape, the scenery, the actual natural physical landscape. If it's inside, you can still describe the lighting, the noises, the furniture, so forth. Imagery and text. This gets us to our writing activity today from home. I posted that in the lesson for the remote day, snow day today. Justin St. Germain, Son of a Gun, is a memoir. A memoir is like a, sibling or a cousin to the personal narrative. They're written in the very same style. Memoir is just a long-form version of a personal narrative that would be a book. So a personal narrative typically is a shorter form of a memoir. So that's a great example. I said earlier, you want to observe what he does. Look at the writing moves he makes about describing the heat, describing the road, describing the scenery. Read that today and do the exercise at the end of the passage. This picture, by the way, was taken in Colorado by myself. I took it in southwest Colorado, and I thought it was just a great road that was perpendicular to the mountains, so you could definitely write some imagery looking at this picture. Okay, timeline. I need a basic timeline of your events. Your reader needs to know where you are in life. So are you a junior in high school? Are you a freshman? Are you a ninth grader? Are you starting the summer after your senior year in high school? Whatever. We need to have some time reference. You do not have to put the exact day, month, and year. That's too detailed, unless it's a particular day that's important, like a certain birthday, anniversary, so forth. Yes, put that. But in general, you don't need that level of particularity. You just need to have some. I need to know where you are in your life, and also I need to know geography. Where are you? Where is this story taking place? So I've got some examples of how to point to a season in your life without actually saying how old you are. Look at those at the bottom there, 1 year from graduation. Well, I know you're probably either junior or early in your senior year in high school. You need to have some conflict, tension, and challenge. That does not mean arguments. It doesn't need fights, but it does mean trying to overcome something. That's key to writing a narrative. Some lesson learned. Maybe you didn't fully overcome it, but you learned something about yourself. So keep that in mind. You need to create meaning. I call it the so what. So keep that in mind. Ask yourself, so what? Why would people care about this? You need to do it. That's your job, to sell that story, to explain how the experience changed you. Why should we care? Tell us why we should care. By describing the meaning in your life, the impact. How is this creating impact and meaning in your life today? Just to revisit where we are, we've been over some of this, and we're continuing to move around this infographic here. Okay, this is really important to personal narrative, so I hope you understand all this. So the situation, I'm sorry about that, blocking out the situation, but that's okay. Situation is essentially what happened. What are the details? The who, what, when, where, and why, the dates, the timeline, the place. That's important. You need all those. We need to know what's happening. The reader does not need to be lost. However, if you only have situation and you don't make a story out of it, you haven't written a personal narrative. You have instead written just an account of events, the basic facts of something that happened, which is not a personal narrative. You need to take that situation and mold it into a story. So meaning, personal growth. I will not read all of those, but that's what I mean by story. Okay, persona is like how you changed over time. You're looking back at the person you were when you were 15, when this happened, or 16, whatever, and you describe that person. Universal truths, sufferings, relationships, all of that, shifting worldview. How did you change? So that's the story, the takeaway of the impact. The situation is essentially what are the events of the situation, the basic facts, all of that that's listed there. How does this support personal narrative writing? Skilled writers take that situation and make it into an interesting and engaging story. You need both. I don't need to be lost, so I don't want to, the reader needs to know the basic situational details, so you need to have some of both. Not every situation is a story. That's really important that you put that in your mind. Do not write a report of something that's not interesting or just give us the facts, because you might not have a story. You might just have some day or some trip that was things happen, but it's not actually wasn't impactful in your life, so you don't have a story. So keep that in mind. Make the reader feel like they are a part of your story. We will do this in class next class day probably, but just don't worry about that for now. Particularity, what makes your narrative unique? That particularity of your struggles can point to universal truths. So like if you were on a sports team and you maybe were not starting or you didn't get a lot of playing time, but you persevered and you were on the same team 2 years later and you ended up starting because you worked so hard and you overcame challenges, that's a universal truth of perseverance, of continue to try. Maybe that love and grief is involved. Those are universal themes. Things that anybody in the world can relate to are universal truths or universality. Themes and truths, self-discovery, hope, all of that. Your story is particular to you, so it's uniquely yours, but you want to point to those universal truths. So keep that in mind, and that's really a key component, that this relationship in a personal narrative. Turning points. Try to give us some kind of something that takeaway, like a clear lesson learned, identity shape, challenges overcome. How you changed the person, your worldview, how did it change? Each narrative needs to show how your experience changed you. Powerful narrative comes from a memorable story. Everyone has a narrative to write. Remember, why do you want to tell your story? Why would this be interesting to your audience? But keep this in mind as I close. Everyone's story is worth telling. You have something to tell. I do not want to hear, I have no story to write about. I realize you're only in your first year of college, but you have something to write 800 words about twice, 2 narratives you need to write. But you have 2 narratives. These are not really long pieces of writing. You can find something to write about, and it's worth telling. So continue to think about that, and do not tell me you have nothing to write about, please. Everyone does. So go forth and tell your story. If you have any questions, please email me. I will not see you today this week in class. You can also visit me during my office hours, 10 to 2 on Wednesday, or we can talk on Teams. This picture, the last slide here, is of Pikes Peak in Colorado Springs. Actually, it's a little bit north of Colorado Springs in Woodland Park. Anyway, I was hiking. That was taken at about probably 10 to 11,000 feet up. And so it was an interesting view of Pikes Peak. So that's what that is. Anyway, have a good week. Take care.